Hello everybody, and welcome to another installment of my series where we are breaking down heroes from a new player perspective, looking at their kits, looking at the obligation, looking at the Nemesis kit to really understand what does this character bring to the game of Marvel Champions, along with an example deck that will be using the smallest card pool, maybe not the smallest card pool possible, but using a smaller card pool to be a roadmap for a new player. You like Jean Grey, you like what you see, you want to go out and buy it. What else should you buy? What should you have on hand to make a deck that is going to be functioning with her? Just supply that. And this week we're talking about Jean Grey, aka Phoenix, classic hero from all the way in X-Men 1 in the 1960s. Right there, one of the first five. Couldn't have an X-Men wave without her, I think. And I hate to say that she is defined by the fact that she died in the comics. I feel like that's belittling her a little bit, because by the time we got to that, there's an interesting story there. Just everything between Giant Size X-Men and the death of Phoenix, nothing to do with the game, just my own reading recommendations. If you have the time to read upwards of like 40 comics from the 70s, go for it. But today we are here to talk about Jean Grey. Real quick before we get into everything, I wanted to start a new thing in terms of my recommendations. In the past, I was just giving you the same 5 or 6 references to go consume content. And I wanted to start something new here where I'm just recommending something interesting that is currently going on at the time of recording. And I wanted to highlight the Charred Gambit, who is putting out a series where they are working through the game in release order with a smaller card pool, showing off the deck that they use to defeat it on Expert, which is above what I normally play, and might be above what somebody who's coming to a new player guide might be looking at. But something interesting, I think, to look into. And they are then doing a tier list of the villains as they make it through. Obviously, I'm showing my hand a little bit here. This is recorded about a week in advance from when the review comes out. There might even be 1 or 2 more videos in that time, because they seem to be making a pretty good pace here. If this is interesting to you, go check it out. I would like to use my recommendations to highlight something going on in the community, even if it gets a little out of date by the time someone's watching this in 2026. Cool series, linked in the bio. And back to the review. Jean Grey is a 3 recovery alter ego with the mutant psionic trait, with a setup ability of put the Phoenix Force upgrade into play, restrained side face up, place 4 power counters on it. And in response, after you make a basic recovery, place 1 power counter on the Phoenix Force. So I think this is going to be important. Normally I would talk about both sides of the card before we get into it, but let's just talk about the Phoenix Force real quick. It is a permanent upgrade that's going to be in play right away. You have the restrained trait, which I don't think it's used anywhere else, while this card is face up. And when the last of the 4 counters that were on it are removed, you flip this card over and you go to the Unleashed side. You gain the Unleashed trait. Once again, I'm pretty sure this is unique to her. She gets -2 thwart and +2 attack. So basically she goes from what we will see is a very thwarty character into a very attacky character. And a force response after a power counter is placed here. If there are 4 more counters, flip it over. So this is part of her gameplay. She's going to be going back and forth. And we might as well get into Dark Phoenix here real quick, because that's going to be important. Because like I said, she has her stats are going to get swapped when she goes from restrained to unleashed. So her 3 thwart is going to become 1 thwart, her 1 attack is going to become 3 attack, and her defense is going to stay the same, at least in terms of what is on the card. She is a hero with the Psionic and X-Men trait and the Psionic Bond ability, which is a hero resource. Remove 1 power counter from Phoenix Force, generate a wild resource, limit once per phase. And she's got the 6 hand size, 9 hit points on Alter Ego, the 5 hand size, 9 hit points on the other side. Just interesting build, because there are several heroes that are essentially 2 or 3 different cards. We just looked at Storm last week that is essentially 5 different cards to really kind of like make up her deal. I like that Phoenix goes from being a character that in the early game is going to be able to handle the main scheme, and then as you move towards unleashing is going to be able to just start dealing out damage. There is builds where you just stay restrained the entire time and you are just the thwarty hero at the table. And obviously you have the ability to go back. I will say that from my experience, I don't know that I necessarily make it back to restrained form very often. There are cards that are going to manipulate that, but for the most part, it's coming down to the fact that you have to go to Alter Ego to accrue more. That's the one way you can definitely do it. And when you are using those power counters to generate a wild resource, that means that it's going to be hard to get back to 4, in my opinion. It's not impossible. There's probably ways to do it very effectively if you're recurring the cards that manipulate the power counters a lot. But either way, my only gripe is with, and this does not come up very often. I have as a comic book person, I have my opinions about art. It's one of my things. I don't like this art. I think this is great art, but I think that it just does not vibe well with this. I wish, in this case, doesn't need to be the same artist, but the same tone. I just wish that the art on the restrained side felt like it was more connected to the art on the unleashed side. That's just me. That does not mean that the art is bad. I think the only time where I really feel bad is when you see a hero and you see the ally, and the ally just has supremely better art. That does bother me. I forget what Jean Grey's art or what Phoenix's art looks like from the Cyclops pack. It's probably not even that important. I will say that we've seen the art for her version from the Magneto pack. I think that looks like stellar art. But like I said, with a two-sided card like this, I just wish that this art felt more connected to the other side. That's it. So let's get into her actual cards real quick and move through this. So first up, we've got Scott Summers, a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 health, X-Men traded, and in response of after Cyclops comes into play, place 2 power counters on the Phoenix Force, force interrupt when Cyclops leaves play, remove 2 power counters from the Phoenix Force. I like this because he's trying to help her stay in her restrained form. When he goes away, he kind of loses her cool a little bit. Other than that, the fact that he's a 2/2 with 1 consequential damage for each and 3 health is good. I've used him before in a sidekick deck only because I wanted to keep him around. I did not want to remove 2 power counters, because even just the fact that you can have her in unrestrained form, then play Cyclops out so that you just got more resources to use is nice. And losing power counters once you're on the unleashed side can be a detriment to you only because you're losing a resource generator. Beyond that, I think he's a fine signature ally. Like I said, I think he's very thematic, and I think that overall his stats are pretty good. Then we've got 2 copies of Telekinetic Attack, a 3-cost event, attack psionic. Hero action, deals 7 damage to an enemy. If you have the Unleashed trait, this attack deals 2 additional damage and gains overkill. I love this card. I feel like I love a lot of cards out of her kit. I love this card a lot. I love the art. I love what it does. I love that it can deal 9. I love that it can get overkill. It pushes you to want to be unleashed, which I feel like thematically, I like the fact that it's tempting you into doing this. It's like, it's going to deal damage, but wouldn't you love to be unleashed so that you could just do a little more damage? Wouldn't that feel great? Being powerful would feel great. And maybe it's just me, maybe I get too into it, but I love the fact where it tempts you, like, oh, maybe you want to engage the Phoenix Force. Maybe that power would be life and all-consuming and death and ravaging, and let's do it. Then we've got Phoenix Firebird, a card that I forget is an event. I think of it as an upgrade, and boy oh boy would it be an interesting card if it were an upgrade. It is a 1-cost event with the Phoenix trade. Hero action, choose to either remove a power counter from Phoenix Force and ready Phoenix, or place 2 power counters on the Phoenix Force. I like to use it as a way to ready up my hero, but it's also nice to just be able to make more power counters. On your next turn, you have access to more wild resources. If you do want to move to your restrained, I think this is maybe the best way to push yourself towards the restrained side. Cyclops can do that for you, but then you're kind of risking that Cyclops is going to then take the counters are going to come off, and you're going to be that much closer to going back to Dark Phoenix, or the unrestrained form. You're not going to Dark Phoenix. You're just going to the unleashed form. That is something that I think is interesting, and I kind of skipped over this, and I apologize. So once this flips over and it's got 4 counters on it, and Cyclops goes away, and suddenly this has got 2 power counters on it, it's like at least you've made it back to the restrained form. And that's the purpose of the card. That's the design of the card. But you've made it back, so losing Cyclops is not going to cause you to suddenly go unleashed again. It certainly can, but it not necessarily is going to guarantee to do that. Overall, I like this card. I like that it has 2 modes that I don't feel like are ever not something you're going to want to do. You're going to want one of these pretty much every time you play it. They both have valid uses. Then we've got Telepathic Trickery, a 2-cost event, Psionic Thwart, hero action, thwart, remove 4 threat from a scheme. If you are unleashed, stun and confuse an enemy. Again, unleashed would be kind of tempting. Wouldn't you like to do that? I bet it would be great to have all these extra things going on. Just overall, its base form is okay. Could be better. Its unleashed form is tempting, and I think is very good. Being able to stun and confuse an enemy, can be a minion, can be the villain, all good. Then we've got 2 copies of Psychic Blast, a 2-cost event, Psionic, hero action, deal 4 damage to the villain. If you are unleashed, deal 4 damage to each minion engaged with you. Can I interest you in being unleashed? Because that would be pretty cool. This is a cool card. This makes for stories. My only thing, and the art kind of gives it away too, I wish this had the mental resource, because if I could do more damage to Juggernaut, that would be great. In fact, the other one is also, is that? Nope, Psionic Attack is. So yeah, it would be great if this just had a mental resource on it so that I could deal a little bit more damage to Juggernaut, but it's my own thing. This is the kind of card that tells stories. It makes for really cool moments. If you're unleashed, if you're not unleashed, it's not great. It is limited. It can only deal damage and only 4 damage to the villain. But not every card can be not Telepathic Trickery. Not every card can be Telekinetic Attack. There's going to be highs and lows. This is a little bit low, but at the same time, if you're unleashed, feels pretty good. Then we're just moving so quick here. So we've got Phoenix Suit, a 2-cost upgrade item. Phoenix gains the aerial trait. If you are restrained, you gain steady. That's kind of nice. If you are unleashed, you gain retaliate 1. So what I like about this is that there is a benefit to being in either form. Being in restrained form is super nice. Being able to kind of like keep your mind about you. You don't get stunned as easily. You don't get confused as easily. And then the irony of the fact that if you do go unleashed in that form, suddenly the tokens that are on you suddenly do become stunned and you do become confused. But overall, cool card. I think just gaining the aerial trait has its perks. It pushes you if you want to move into an aerial deck. This is a way to do it. I feel like there's probably a version now that Angel has come out and given a lot of solid support to Ariel that you could realistically consider, hey, what if I made mulliganing for Phoenix Suit my top concern and I went to try to play Ariel? I think that is a deck you could probably build now. Maybe I'll look into that and throw it in the description one of these days. Then we've got White Hot Room, her kind of like Phoenix Forcey room. Thanks a lot, Grant Morrison, I believe. 2-cost support, location, Phoenix, alter ego action, exhaust, White Hot Room. Choose to either place a counter on the Phoenix Force or heal 2 damage from Jean Grey. Another repeatable way to get back to your restrained form. I use this mostly for healing damage, but if you do use a card like Downtime to make her recovery even better, then you don't need to feel bad about using this to just put counters on. And once again, just like the other card This has uses for both ways that you want to use it, which I feel like sometimes alter ego action cards are lacking. They do have purpose, but sometimes you're just like, that's all I'm getting while I'm in alter ego form, and this kind of takes the sting away. You don't feel as bad for being in that form. She's got a lot of 1-ups, I realized. Okay, so she's got Mental Paralysis, a 2-cost upgrade, psionic, hero form only, attached to a non-elite minion. Is that? Oh yeah, that is Ahab. Cool. Attached minion cannot activate. Force response after you flip to alter ego form, discard this card. So I like the fact that this is a hero form only card that goes away if you go into alter ego form. Sometimes you can kind of cheese that, but this is like, when I am Phoenix, I am restraining you. You are not going to be able to do what you're going to do. I think this is kind of a hidden gem of a card. I feel like when people think of Phoenix, they don't think of this card, and that's okay because this isn't the best card in her kit, but I think that it is, like I said, an unsung hero. It does work, and when it matters a lot. Rise from the Ashes, a 3-cost upgrade. Phoenix traded. Interrupt. When you would be defeated, remove this card from the game. Ready your identity and restore it to its printed hit point value instead. Remove each power counter from Phoenix. So you are going to go to Unleashed form. If you're already in Unleashed form, you're not going to have any more counters. I think just being able to like essentially reincarnate, come back, like, rise from the ashes like a phoenix. This is very thematic. This is the kind of card that I don't necessarily mulligan for, because getting this out, you're just asking for a caught off guard to just take it away. But it is the kind of card that I hope I get to play before I run through my deck completely, so that it is there. There's not a lot of cards like this. Obviously, Deadpool embodies this whole idea of you just can't die in hero form. And it is also helpful that this is usable in Alter Ego. But I know like Captain America has a card like this, and there's probably even more cards that I'm just not thinking of at the moment. Wolverine, I guarantee you, has a card like this, and I would know that if we were doing this in the correct order. But either way, I think this is a cool card. I think this is the kind of card that, like I said, I want to get out and play. The fact that it completely restores her health is also notable. This kind of effect generally will leave you at like 1 or 3 and not you're completely healed up. It really does it makes Phoenix feel like a monster. It's like, yeah, you took me down, but I'm just gonna like oh god, who is that? The Undertaker, I think, from wrestling, where he just does that thing where he's laying down, he just folds right back up. It's like that's Phoenix. She's just like, okay, let's do this. Then we've got Mind Control. This is the card I think of when I think of Phoenix. Not my favorite card, but this is the card I think of when I think of Phoenix. 4-cost upgrade, condition, psionic, attached to a non-elite minion. Take control of the attached minion and treat it as a controlled ally with a blank text box. Its thwart is equal to its printed scheme, and it takes 1 consequential damage after it thwarts or attacks. We've seen this on an ally who... Karma. We've seen this on Karma. I think this is such a cool effect. I do think that 4 is a little expensive, but I will say you put this onto a Sentinel who they have a lot of attack. And if you have a way to give them an honorary X-Men or something to just boost their health up a little bit, or Sentinels generally come with toughness. So this can take scenarios and break them. So maybe 4 is appropriate because this can break scenarios really easily. Obviously, it has the restriction. You can't put it on an elite minion, but you'd be surprised how often minions are not elite that happen to have pretty good stats. And additionally, there are minions who have stuff in their text box that, if they were an ally, would be kind of a setback. And this just says, you don't worry about that. Just go off the printed stats. They're going to be cool. I think it was on an episode of The Winning Hand that talked about this. There is a flavor issue here because there is no ally of Sabretooth. And I don't think we're going to see it. Something tells me the Magneto pack is not going to have a minion of Sabretooth. Maybe he joined the Hellfire Club. I don't know. This is a card that creates stories. And so it probably is my second favorite card because it's high up there. It's not the best. From an economy standpoint, it may not be the best, but I think this is such a fun card. And then last card out of her pack is Telekinetic Shield. Yeah, sorry. I almost read this as just friendly character. So Telekinetic Shield, a 2-cost upgrade with psionic trait attached to a friendly character. Forced interrupt. When attached enemy would take damage from an enemy, place that damage here instead. Then if there is at least 5 damage, discard Telekinetic Shield. So the nice thing about this is, well, first of all, cool art. I think this is very nice. I wish more of her kit had this kind of art. Let me just check here. Does Allie do any other art in the set? She doesn't. I think this kit has a lot of really good art. I do sort of wish that more of the art kind of looked like this, and that's just kind of my own sensibilities. But this isn't what you're looking for. I think this is really cool. The fact that this could take 8 damage on it and then you discard it. Like, this could take a very large amount of damage and prevent it. Is super great. I will say the only thing, and this makes sense for a balancing issue, but the fact that you have to choose a character when you play it. There are other characters that have cards like this where it's just like block 3 damage for a friendly character. I understand this is going to be able to absorb a lot of damage, and so having the slight downside of you have to put it onto a specific character to defend them, but still being and this does get around consequential damage. Consequential damage is still going to happen, but still being able to put this onto an ally that you really need is so great. Being able to defend them, being able for them to do the consequential damage, and then basically sit there with one more consequential damage that they could take before they go out, but then they can just take a big attack. And they might even be able to survive. So they might be able to take 2 big attacks. Like, that is great. I think this card is unsung. Once again, there's only one of it. She has a lot of cards there's only one of. But overall, I think that it's a card that you want to at least consider. Of course, if you don't have a build that cares about allies, then you might not find yourself being there. Is that Honey Badger too? I think that's Honey Badger. But overall, I will say, just to make it clear, this is my favorite card. I think it's hard for me to not pick an attack that they're always going to rank highly, but I just think that the art really sells it for me. Like, there are other good cards in this pack, but I think this is my favorite just based on the art. All right, and here we are talking about a new player skewed deck list for Phoenix. This is definitely a point of where I had to check my pride. I wanted to sift through Marvel CDB and find a Justice deck or a Protection deck that kind of fit the criteria of minimal amount of packs to push you in a direction if you happen to like Phoenix. And when I first stumbled upon this deck, I was like, this just doesn't seem to have all the bells and whistles I'm looking for. And then I realized that first of all, to expect someone else to have built the exact criteria I was looking for is a little pig-headish. But also, I think that it's realistic to say that when you're first starting out, your decks are not going to be optimized. So why should I expect that a starter deck that I'm giving you an example of with a very limited card pool is going to do that? And so I'm very thankful that this creator has gone out of their way to do that. And if you look further down, later on, they published lists with Colossus, Shadowcat, and Cyclops. And I believe when I looked through here at their other deck lists, I won't go dig this deep in the future, but they have plenty of deck lists here. I don't know if the other ones get a little bit more beefy. Once again, I don't expect that other people are going to just build decks to this criteria, but I appreciate that this creator has built several decks to the criteria that I'm looking for, just because it's nice to know that when people use the beginner tag, it actually means something, and it's not just like, oh yeah, if you're a beginner with 11 packs, here you go. But that's all to say. Let's talk about this deck, because I do think there's some positive things about this deck that I was overlooking, like I said, simply because of my own pride. With how Phoenix works, where she can go from being a very defensive character, a very thwarting character, into that aggression character once her Phoenix Force is flipped, I think this deck does a good job of playing into let Jean Grey be who she's going to be, and once she turns into that attacker, everything else complements it. So I like Hulk. He is a... you probably are aware of him because he is a core set card, but I think with the way that this deck is skewed in terms of what it's going to be doing, the fact that this is going to deal damage to each character. Now granted, that's not necessarily what you always want, but I think that in a deck where you know that's what you're going to come to expect, you're going to be dealing a damage to each character, I'm willing to let him just be a guy who's going to go out there and just wreck house. And we're not going to worry so much about dealing 2 damage to a specific enemy. We're just going to use Hulk as a hammer to just with precision take out an entire field of minions. I'm going to do less scrolling around. And then Magic, who is another character that I feel like should be in a lot of aggression decks. I think that in some ways she's been a little outclassed. Sunfire comes to mind as somebody who might take her place. But the fact that she can get rid of a non-elite minion engaged with a X-Men hero is something that is good minion control. You have Star-Lord, who has his signature minion, or his signature ally, who just gets rid of a non-elite. He just defeats a non-elite minion. Like, this is similar in a way, but works for any X-Men hero. And yeah, I enjoy her. And then Mockingbird, everyone knows. Nick Fury, everybody knows. But Storm is also a unique minion who will also pair with the Soul Sisters down here. But because when she thwarts, you can move threat from a scheme, from the scheme that you thwarted to another scheme, means that it's not always great because there's not always a bunch of side schemes in play. But frankly, if you can... I realize that thwarting the main scheme is just prolonging the game. It's just not losing, which is not always the best thing to be doing. Being able to basically thwart the main scheme for 4 if you need to really clear off a scheme, or just take a side scheme that's really problematic, thwart it away. You're not getting rid of all of the threat, but you do get rid of a scheme that is standing in your way. Like maybe there's one that has the icon on it where you can't thwart the main scheme. Well, thwart that away, move some of that scheme somewhere else, and get on with your day. And like, this is just a unique design that I wish we could see more of, but I also feel like if we saw more of it, it wouldn't feel as special. And the last one is Tigra. After she attacks and just defeats a minion, heal a damage on her. So she is just a good minion. Once again, I think she's out of the core set. I think that obviously you could just lower her cost by 1 and make her like even more of a great ally. But I think the fact that she can regenerate some of her health is very helpful. And then Psychic Assault, which is at the time when this deck came out, was the only thing you could use it with was Phoenix. But deal 3 damage to an enemy, confuse that enemy. If you have that psionic trait, good card. Psionic aggression needs something. I realize that Psylocke and Phoenix might make up for some of the shortcomings, but I do feel like I don't see a strong reason to play Psionic in aggression, and I want to see more cards like this. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon. Psychic Rapport, which so this just pairs with with Cyclops. I'll show you the card here because just being able to ready both Cyclops and Phoenix, then choose to either return a Cyclops card from your discard pile to your hand or put 2 power counters on the Phoenix Force. Interesting design, I will say, because if this is in the Cyclops deck, I mean, obviously it's set up in such a way that you're going to pick which one aligns with the hero you're currently playing, but it's just interesting that this so boldly says this is for a Cyclops hero, this is for a Phoenix hero. Just being able to ready them is also just great. You know, we could go on and on about the shortcomings of team up cards, but I think this one's interesting. Then Relentless Assault, card that I think could probably see more play. I kind of forget this is a core set card, but it is a good core set card. When you have a small card pool, the ability to take out a minion and still get easy overkill is pretty great, because this isn't asking you to pay an additional. This is just saying if you use a physical resource to pay for this card, you get to just overkill, which is great. And Soul Sisters, which I have used this card before. I've used this card in a Cyclops deck where I had both Phoenix and Storm, because Phoenix is Cyclops' signature ally and Storm was in the deck, and the ability to just kind of like take both of those allies and do something interesting with them was cool. It doesn't work out all the time, but it was certainly something to do. And with Storm being such a unique ally, I do feel like being able to get more uses out of her while also readying Phoenix, taking some damage off of her. Like, this is a nearly perfect card in my eyes, because I think it doesn't really need to feed into theme, but it just mechanically does a lot of good. Then nothing new there. Avengers Mansion, card that I feel like has been outclassed, but should be, like, both of these are kind of your early game player. Like, these are cards that are going to be staples for you when you have a smaller card pool. And as it gets bigger, you'll phase these out. Tac Team card, I hope the Shield box can add upon. I see this as having a lot of potential. We just need to untap some of its potential. Then Downtime, which was reprint with Phoenix, I think is good for her. Not to say that she necessarily needs it, but just being able to take that 3 recovery, make it 5, and put Phoenix in a position where she is... Oh. I was clicking on my recording software page. But just being able to take that recovery and bump it up so that she can basically flip down and be almost entirely damageless when she goes back up. I think this is not a perfect deck. I think that's, but I think that it is a deck that is reflective of what you can do with a small card pool, and this is a card pool that I would very strongly recommend. Core set, you're already going to have Mutant Genesis. I think is, if you, like I said in the Storm video, if you are going to buy into the X-Men wave, I feel like Mutant Genesis is one of the first things you should do. Each box that aligns with whatever hero you're buying for that wave is probably a good box to have, and this just feeds into that. Gives you a good core, obviously gives you more heroes, and it gives you more scenarios, which is also important. But either way, let's get back to talking about the Nemesis kit and the obligation for Phoenix, and boy, is this one a doozy. All right, and let's talk about the obligation. So, Burning Hunger, a obligation that you give to the Jean Grey player. When revealed, if you have the Unleashed trait, search the encounter deck, discard pile, and set aside area for Dark Phoenix and reveal her. Then remove Burning Hunger from the game. If you have the Restrained trait, remove 1 power card from Dark Phoenix, and this card gains Surge. Discard this card. I think this is pretty cool. This is just another way to essentially get your Nemesis out, and I like the fact that it plays on both sides. It says, like, hey, if you are on Unleashed, unfortunately we've hit your obligation and now you had to face down your Nemesis. But if you are Restrained, we're just going to push you towards Unleashed and you're going to get another encounter card, and this is going to come back at some point. This might be the kind of way that I wish more obligations were built, where obviously not every hero has like multiple distinct states that they can be in, but when you can play out those states in a way that merges like gameplay and the flavor of the game, merges theme and gameplay, that's when I think you've really hit on a really interesting obligation. Then we've got the Nemesis in question, Dark Phoenix, and why don't we also just get her side scheme right up here quick too. But Dark Phoenix, possibly the most notable Nemesis in the game, for good reason. So she is Dark Phoenix, a minion with 2 scheme, 2 attack, 12 hit points, the Cosmic Entity trait, and she is elite. She has Steady, toughness, and villainous. She is stacked. And the star ability on her scheming, when Dark Phoenix schemes, place that threat on Consume the World if able. And when revealed, search the encounter deck, discard pile, and set aside area for Consume the World and reveal it. So, let me just make sure. Yeah, so Burning Hunger does reveal her. So no matter how you find Dark Phoenix, you are going to find Consume the World. Legendary minion. Kind of creates an alternate lose condition for you, especially because she's so strongly connected with Consume the World, which is a side scheme with the permanent trait. While there is no threat here, this scheme loses the Amplify icon and Forced Response after threat is placed here. If there is at least 12 threat here, the players lose the game, and it starts with 6. Obviously, there are shenanigans. It says place the threat here when she schemes if able. I'm not going to try to remember the entire card pool to say how you would end up in a point where a permanent side scheme is not in play. But either way, this is an alternate lose condition. I do feel like I've talked about before how, 7 out of 10 heroes get a 8 out of 10 Nemesis. I feel like this is a 8 out of 10 hero that's getting a 10 out of 10 Nemesis. This is brutal. You need to get Dark Phoenix off the table, but she is going to really make that tough because, well, she has tough and she is villainous, so that 2/2 stat is not reflective of what's going to happen. And if she gets to scheme, she's going to make Consume the World that much closer. Plus, it's amplifying. Like this is a 2-card 1/2 punch that's really going to wake you up. And if you have a Dark Phoenix, or if you have a Phoenix player at your table, you always need to consider, what if we had Burning Hunger? What if Dark Phoenix comes out? What's going to happen? Should you be unleashed? Why were you tempted by the Unleashed trait? The cards are so good. Why didn't you? What? No. And yeah, it's chef's kiss. And then we round it out with 3 copies of Fiery Rage, which is a treachery peril. So I don't feel like we see this a lot in Marvel Champions. I'm so used to Arkham where we do. But while you're resolving this card, other players cannot help you, which kind of takes on a different flavor here. But either way, when revealed, if Dark Phoenix is in play, she activates against you. Oof. If Dark Phoenix is not in play, place 1 threat on Consume the World, and this card gains Surge. Oof. So there's not a lot going on here. I think the peril part is basically because she's going to activate against you and you can't have other players block for you. That's what it's trying to make happen. Overall, I think this is a perfectly valid card. This works very well and it plays into everything. It just builds upon the Nemesis kit we've already looked at. It's interesting because this is a Nemesis kit that has very little in terms of card variety, but very much in the theme. Like it hits all the right notes. And where have I put her? Okay. And that does it. That does it for Dark Phoenix, for Jean Grey Phoenix. I think that she is a very powerful hero. I think she is a hero that everybody should play with, whether at the table or own themselves and really get the most out of. She creates stories. You're going to remember the times when she was in play. But overall, I think that she's a fun hero. I think that she definitely has her downsides. The Dark Phoenix Nemesis kit is notable. But man, being unleashed wouldn't your life just be better if you were unleashed? Yeah, you should probably be unleashed. Don't worry about the Dark Phoenix. Don't worry about that. That's not going to happen. If you win fast enough, you're not even going to see your Nemesis. So next time we will be talking about Wolverine. It will be 2 weeks because I learned my lesson. I'm not going to try to do a new hero kit while also fitting in the unboxing, which should be next Friday with Magneto. I hope you have a great day and see you next time.